Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Losing the Plot. I'm Leo Robertson. I find artists of all varieties that I find interesting. They're usually writers, they don't have to be. And we talk about their work, we talk about life, we talk about anything and everything. We lose the plot together, hence the title of the show. As always, we start with the latest of what's going on over at Aphotic Realm. Issue number 7 is out now. It's gruesome. Who doesn't love over-the-top 80s horror films? A punk band fights off a horde of possessed fans at a local concert. A makeout session at the cemetery takes a turn for the worst. Slashers, critters, demons, gore, hairspray. The 80s horror B-movie aesthetic is what issue 7 Gruesome is all about, so do check that out. The Realm also has its own merch store right on the Aphotic Realm site itself. You can buy t-shirts, beanies, caps and tank tops. And if you check out the new Aphotic Realm Instagram, you can see yours truly sporting an Aphotic Realm t-shirt in the dark grey heather colour. I think it's great. And there's loads of cool other merch. I'm sure I will get other stuff too. And I hope you will as well. Please do check out the merch in the store. Finally, I hope you will consider supporting Aphotic Realm on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get early access to podcast episodes such as this one. You can also get digital downloads of all Aphotic books as well. So do check that out. Please consider supporting Aphotic Realm on Patreon also.
I wrote this thing. I hope you like it. Let's talk about it, yeah. Let's lose track. Losing the Plot Podcast. Losing the Plot Podcast. Losing the Plot Podcast. Talking to Leo S.
This episode, our guest is India LaPlace. She's the author, most recently, of the poetry collection Sad Discoveries, which is out now with Analog Submission Press. So do check that out, and I hope you enjoy our chat. Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad we're finally chatting.
I know, it took long enough.
So how's your weekend going? It's 9 a.m. You've been up for 4 hours?
Yeah, I've been up since like 5.
How come you have to get up so early?
I'm just a crazy person.
Right.
And I like being up early in the morning.
Mm-hmm. It was summer recently. Did you go anywhere cool? I know you've been... Was Japan the last place you went?
Japan, I was in Japan last October. I was just barely on the East Coast in like Maryland and New York City. I got back on Tuesday night. But yeah, Japan was the last big trip that I took. You were traveling.
Yeah, no, that's why I ask, is I got back from Japan like a week ago. So I was there.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I was in Tokyo and then in Osaka where my brother lives.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. I don't know if I would have the confidence to go out there myself if I didn't know that he was there. Because he obviously... Yeah.
I loved it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with Arthur and we backpacked, so we just had like one bag each.
Mm-hmm.
And and we stayed in hostels. We didn't really have like where we were staying planned, so we ended up going to like 8 or 9 different cities, which was cool.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nice.
You went out there without knowing where you were going to stay.
We had like a place booked for the first night in Tokyo, and then we went to Kyoto and it was going to be on a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a place booked there just because we knew it would be really busy and crowded.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we didn't have anything booked. We just sort of like went as we go. As we went, we just booked different hostels and stuff like that.
Oh, that's crazy. Is that how you typically do a holiday?
That's what I like to do. I guess not always, but I think it's fun, and then it kind of leaves it open so that you can do whatever you want or like go to whatever city you want to go to.
Mm-hmm. And you were there on like some Horror Sleaze Trash related business as well, right?
Well, we ended up there was a photographer in Australia who had worked with Ben in the past, or sent Ben stuff in the past, and that we had reconnected with, and he had sent us a photo shoot he did of this Japanese girl named Billy when she was living out there, but she just happened to be in Japan at the same time as us. And so we met up to do like a photo shoot with her and hang out and stuff. So it ended up working out, which it was really cool to meet her.
That's awesome. Are you typically involved in the shoots for the poetry books?
Sometimes I reach out to a lot of people just because I run the social media. And so I end up connecting with a lot of different girls who model, or like girls will reach out to me and say that they're interested in it, which is nice. So, and usually I'm there. It can depend on the shoot. It depends on, like, our last cover girl, she lives in Ohio, and so she took her photos and sent them to us, but I like to be involved in them. And it's always like easier for a cute young girl to like reach out to another girl and be like, do you want to pose half naked, than it is for like an older guy to do that.
Yeah, of course. I run this like, I've got this like poetry blog, and I think you're really beautiful.
I know.
Yeah, sure. I heard that one before, mate. I don't know if you can hear, but it started like proper raining down here in Stavanger, and I've got this angled roof like right above where I record my podcast. It's just battering down. It's going to give a nice bit of character to the interview, I think.
Oh, good. I can't hear it, but that's cool.
Okay, cool.
I wish it would just rain here. It's so hot in Utah.
Tell me about Utah. You've always lived there?
I was born and raised here, and then I got married when I was 17 to a soldier. And so we lived in Alabama and spent most of our weekends up in Tennessee. And then he was stationed in South Korea for a year and a half or 2 years. So I moved out there with him.
Wow.
And then we moved to Texas after that, which is when we ended up splitting up. And I came back home.
Did your time in South Korea, did that help you become adventurous in your holidays?
Probably. It like moving so much, definitely, like I got bit by like a travel bug. Like it's my favorite thing. That's like, I'll work my ass off all year just so that I can travel.
But yeah, so you got married when you were 17. Is that I get the impression, I think, from some of the poems in your book that that's a typical thing to do for the people where you live.
It's not totally typical. There's a lot of Mormons out here. And so people end up getting into relationships and having a lot of kids really young. But 17 was a little abnormal, but I was pregnant and both our families were religious. So there was a lot of pressure from family to do that.
That's intense. I suppose that's just, but that's like the normality for you and the people around you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot of stuff happens out here and there's a lot of religious pressure.
This is a strange question, but like, how do people in that, like with that kind of mentality, in that kind of culture, how do they respond to what's going on in the rest of the world? And they see, progress is being made and things are kind of relaxing in that respect globally, it seems. Yeah. Doesn't that influence people with those mindsets?
Mormons have this tendency to sort of be like, if it's bad, why would we talk about it? And if it's good, or if it's good, why would we talk about it? And if it's bad, pretend it's good. It's not everyone, but for the most part, they're very conservative, and very but yeah, they just sort of pretend everything is good. And like my parents are still very religious, and for them, it's like, they get caught up in the whole abortion stuff and they're like, we'll vote for whoever doesn't believe in abortion, and they don't care about the rest of it. Just think like God will punish them if they don't vote that way.
That's wild. But what's your relationship like with your family now?
So I was adopted by my grandparents when I was like 12.
Mm-hmm.
And so they raised me. I get along well with my grandfather. I've never gotten along with my grandmother, but I have issues with mother figures, I think.
Right. Where does that, do you know where that comes from?
I think just the way that women interacted with me when I was a little kid, because my mom was always in and out. Like, she would be gone for 6 months and then she'd show back up and pretend she was a good mom. Like, if I wasn't wearing clothes that were considered modest, like in the Mormon church, she and the other female relatives would like insult me and call me horrible names. And I was like 11 years old. And so it was a very inappropriate way to talk to like a kid who's developing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just think I like grew up feeling like they would like turn on you or treat you badly for not doing what they thought was right.
Has anything specific kept you in Utah?
Not, I mean, for a long time it was just family. I moved back after my divorce because my grandmother had another stroke and my dad needed help because my sisters were still teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to leave just because, like I said, moving around was something I really liked in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So I've wanted to leave, and then stuff always comes up. Like, I was dating this girl for like 3 years, and I met Arthur while I was dating her, and Arthur and I always kind of had an open thing. So it was like connections that kind of kept me here, but I like have always planned on leaving. I mean, moving costs a lot of money too, so there is that.
Yeah, it really does. And it's not the perfect solution. I mean, there are people everywhere. You still have to deal with those.
Exactly. It might be easier, like, if I didn't have a kid to think about too, because it's like I need to have a job, I need to know neighborhoods that are safe and school systems and stuff. So that definitely factors in. And then she, on the opposite end, my daughter is always like, let's live in a bus. Like, she like has she's like, I'll do whatever. I don't need to go.
How did having a kid change the way that you looked on the way you were raised?
I feel like I basically looked at all of the parental figures in my life, and I was like, this is like, they taught me how I didn't want to be as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me realize I had more issues from my childhood than I thought I did in the past, like more stuff to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And where it came from.
I mean, knowing what you don't want is a great start. You know, I think it's often more important. It's just about all I really learn is I'm not doing that again. You know, I don't really know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't really know what comes next.
Unhealthy cycle.
Yeah, it's like I don't really know what comes next, but it's not that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's about as far as I've really gotten in terms of navigation. But I mean, one of the topics of your poems, I think, is, well, it's like you have mental health struggles, and sometimes your daughter sees that. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always had depression, or like, I guess probably not always, but I was diagnosed with it at a really young age. It was so like tumultuous that I'm not surprised as an adult. And yeah, and she sees that, but I've also always been very straightforward about it with her.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't want it to be like this big taboo thing. Because I remember being young and thinking, like, if anyone knows I have depression, or if I have to go to therapy, it means I'm crazy, and if I'm crazy, no one will love me. And I don't want like her to make a connection like that in her brain, because that's just like not true. But kids get caught up in weird ideas.
No, I mean, it's still the case worldwide, I think. I mean, I don't know, men especially have almost, like a lot of men have kind of cartoonishly dumb ideas about therapy and mental health, it seems. It's like...
Oh, I know. I have friends who have boyfriends that like I have this close friend who has anxiety, and so so often she'll take Xanax, and he'll go off about how she's weak-minded and how and all this stuff, and it's like,
I bet that helps, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I tell her.
No, it's...
But
yeah.
I'm very critical of that sort of behavior.
I don't know anyone whose life would not be improved by therapy, really. It's just going in and chatting to somebody about what's going on in your life and then making a plan to make it better. Like, that's it.
I agree with that, especially because somebody who's not like an unbiased third party is going to give you a better perspective than someone who's trying not to hurt your feelings or someone who's judging you based on their own stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Somebody who has their own agenda, or somebody who doesn't want you to succeed because they don't want themselves to succeed and they're modeling their life on you. Like, it's not... things get weird, and I think it's really... I talk about this, of course, because I've started going because of all kinds of crap going on in my own life, and I think it's just really useful to have somebody you've never met before say, yes, I totally agree with your perspective on what's just happened.
It makes such a difference. I've been in and out of therapy my whole life, but yeah, it's always made a big difference.
Do you still find... I mean, this is something I really struggle with as well, because I'm now 13. Most of the people I know are in their 30s, and sometimes you hear like, oh, I'm sorry I acted like that, like my parents when I was young, blah, blah, blah. Or they say I was like bullied in high school or something like that. And I find it really... I find it really difficult to be empathetic towards things like that around people my age, because I feel like at some point you just have to drop it. And I know that that's silly, because you can't really.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think it's important to identify where certain behaviors are coming from, but I think that whatever form that takes, at some point it's like nobody else owes you anything. And like having struggles or having been bullied or growing up in a bad environment, it's not an excuse to treat the other people around you poorly. So I have very little empathy for that as well.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah.
If you've worked it out and you're a grown adult, you're the missing part of that equation, really?
I think so.
God, I don't know. It's tough. In this collection, Sad Discoveries, you also talk a little bit about your perspective on marriage.
Yes.
Is it something you'll never do again?
I don't know. It's hard to imagine just because I had such a bad experience, but then it's like you never know who you're gonna meet or how you're gonna connect. So I'm more open to it than I used to be when I was even just like a few years ago. I never thought I would do it again, but I also wouldn't be unhappy if I never got married again. So it's not like a goal, but I'm more open to it.
Yeah, but you definitely seem like a person who is, I don't know, defining their own goals and own perspective of success.
I definitely try to.
Because I mean, it's such a perpetual trap that I see other people my age falling into, where they're like, "Well, I got to marry someone." You know, it's like, no, you don't.
I know. I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can imagine like getting married to someone just to get married. But even I know people like that who it looks good on Instagram, so they want to get married and have babies.
Yeah.
You know? Which is insane to me.
It's absolutely wild.
I hope their children are really hard. Like, I hope they're really tough newborns. To have some kind of reality.
Make them work for it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, it's almost a cliche to talk about like the pressure of social media and everything, but I don't know how to make it, it is so strange. Like, a photo website is literally deciding people's entire lives, like where they're going to go on holiday, who they're going to hang out with, and
I know, it's crazy.
what they do.
It's so crazy.
It's
and
so strange.
Yeah, I have friends who it's a big deal to them, and like they'll take the same picture over and over again till it's perfect just to post it. I don't know. And I read something not recently, but maybe about 6 months ago, that talked about how girls who got smartphones before they were like 15 years old, like in high school, dealt with longer ongoing issues with anxiety and depression into their adult lives versus girls who waited. So my daughter has a phone, but I don't let her, it's a little flip phone, and I don't let her get on social media. But I guess it makes sense. And it was specifically for like women are affected by it, I guess, because it actor bully each other when they're young in a different way. So it was interesting that it's affecting this whole different generation too. Yeah,
I mean, in my age, it was like MSN, like the instant messaging thing, and I think that was still pretty intense. You're like, oh my god, the most popular kid in school is logged on. I'm going to stay here an extra few hours, see if they talk to me.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that seems vaguely innocent compared to what's going on now.
I know, it really does.
Because nobody ever logs off. It's just always there.
I know, it's true. When I travel, I turn off all my notifications and I try not to be on it. But it's like, even that's hard. When I was in Japan last year, we were in Kobe on like our 4th night there, and I dropped my phone in the bathtub, and it was like, so it broke. I didn't have it for the rest of the trip, and it was probably the first time I've been that disconnected since I got a smartphone. And like, I don't care that much. It was like a struggle to not be on Instagram, which is really lame.
When did you start writing poetry?
When I was a teenager. I mean, I always wrote little stories and little poems when I was like a little younger kid too. But my parents were really critical of it, and so I kind of had to hide it a little bit. But yeah, and then I was a teenager and I got all angsty and started writing all this depressed poetry. But it was a great outlet.
And so you just kept up writing it?
Yeah, I always kept up writing it. I wrote a lot while I was married because I was really down. I mean, I've had periods of time where I don't write as much. And I used to have this perspective where I was like, I can't write if I'm not inspired. And now it's like, no, I need to set aside time and make myself write, or else my brain gets not out of the habit, but it's harder to get back into the swing of it,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I just realized that like every day is another opportunity to get a little bit better at this thing that you've already decided is your discipline. So just use it, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Do something every day. It's the
only way you get better at it.
Yeah, and the better you get at it, like I don't know if the more fun it becomes, or it just keeps getting better. I think the more you do it, and you can't.
I think so.
You can't exhaust it. There's always more to read. There's always some new idea to write. So.
I agree. And I feel crazier when I don't write. Like I get more down, and I get more like, it's good I have a kid because I have a lot of like self-destructive tendencies, and I get more into that headspace when I'm not like doing something creative like writing.
Yeah. It's
and I'm not really good at any other kind of art, so.
Right. How did you discover that? How did you so you decided poetry was your medium first, and then you've tried other different types?
Sort of. I mean, if I had kept trying other things, maybe I would be good at it. But for me, like, I love words. And I loved books and reading when I was a kid because everything was so bad that it was the only thing that felt good was reading because it was kind of an escape. And so I just like words were what I always kind of latched onto. I have sisters who do photography and I have sisters who model and paint and draw. And I like the idea of it, but I just have no talent for it.
So you come from a creative family?
For the most part, yeah. I think that like mental illness and like trauma breeds creativity. But I also think you have to like, I mean, I think most people who struggle, whether they had a bad childhood or like a bad relationship or whether they have like anxiety or depression or anything like that, I think most people who have something going on in their head would benefit from doing something creative. Like, I think all creative people are a little bit crazy.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And yeah, I totally agree that everyone would benefit from it as well. I think everyone around them would benefit from them doing that also, because if they're in a better mood, if they're expressing things that other people, you know, like one example is I there's somebody I got in contact with because there's some new creative pursuit that I'm working on at the moment, and I was asking them for advice, and they said, "Oh, Leo, it's so great that you're starting this new creative venture. I've always wanted to take up tango lessons, so now I'm going to go take up tango lessons. You've inspired me to start something new." I thought that's great. Like that's better than anything I'm about to do. That because that's kind of a more direct influence than you often get from a piece of writing anyway, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So I feel like when people get started, often what they know are like the people with the biggest mainstream success, which is of course they all know J.K. Rowling or whatever because she's everywhere. So she's she's what you think of as a writer, when in fact she's the last thing you should be thinking of when you think of a writer.
Oh yeah, I agree.
You should just be thinking of the benefit that creative pursuit gives you, and as you're saying, if it's something you're practicing every day, it's more about the practice, it's more about the work itself than the books. But people only see the books, they don't see the practice, but the practice is far more important, and it's taken me a really long time to work that out.
That makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of people who are getting into poetry now, not everybody obviously, but I think a lot of people get into poetry now because they see kind of the success from a select few Instagram poets and stuff, and they're like, I'm tortured too, I can write too, which is fine, and they totally should. But I think that if you get into writing with the idea of being successful, like, so few writers are successful. Like I would go crazy if I didn't write. I don't care about reading my poetry, and I don't care about selling it. It's just like a nice bonus if I do. Yeah. I actually don't like to read my poetry. I don't like the performance aspect of any of that. I get too nervous.
Have you done it before?
No, I've just read it to like people, like one-on-one. I've read it to like family or friends. And that's fine, but even that, like, it makes me sick to my stomach. I've never liked performing. It's really hard for me. I'm a confident person, but that's just something that I can't handle.
Interesting. What about it? What about it gives you anxiety? Or
I don't even know what it is. It's just like, it makes me nauseous to think about it. And it's sort of like some of the stuff I write about, even if I read it out loud to myself, it's difficult for me to hear because it's like either something traumatic or something that makes me emotional. And I just don't want to cry in front of a room of people.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. For sure.
It's vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I can relate to that. A lot of the times I'm writing so that I don't have to think about what happened or have it going around in my head, is to get it out and to get it organized. So
Yeah.
the whole point is not to look at it again, really. It's for other people, I suppose. Or it's for no one, but it's just there, at least.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think you have to, I don't know. For me, it's like I have to write to feel settled in my head. But then it's like I also have to let go when I do put it out there, because you obviously want people to read it and get it the way you meant for it to be understood.
Yeah.
But people so rarely do. Like, you kind of have to step back and let people take from it what they take from it. And that was really hard for me at first. Like, if somebody read a poem I wrote and they got something totally different out of it, I wanted to be like, no, like, understand it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I meant. But then it's like, then you just look like an asshole.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, no, the way you thought was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's analogies even. Yeah, I completely relate to that. And of course, like, if they're taking something different from it than your intention, it means that you created something with enough layers for people to bring themselves to it, which is art, really. Then it's no longer just
I think
you.
so too.
Mm-hmm. But it's like people as well. I mean, I find that, people are, what's great about them is their uniqueness or their unique approach to things. But often I find I'm just like, no, you should do it this way. This is really going to help you out. And then you go, but they don't do things that way because they don't want that. So you're not really, you can't breeze into somebody's life and tell them how to do it, even though from your perspective it would look like if they just followed the way you had it in mind, their life would be better. It's like you don't even know that because you...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, often the stuff people take from it is very personal to them, and what I'm trying to say might not resonate and might not be helpful to the reader. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really grateful that I've had a lot of friends who've read my stuff, and then they've started, they're like, I used to write and now I'm going to start writing again. And that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And people are, I don't know, I think people think that I'm vulnerable by putting it out there, but I just am not as concerned with, I've learned to not be as concerned with how people receive it as they might be at the beginning of doing something like that.
Mm-hmm. There's a quote I read a while ago that I really liked. It's something like, we write from our scars, not from our wounds. So it kind of feels like it feels very, very vulnerable to put it out, because I suppose that you might put something out there that somebody is dealing with at the time, whereas you've written a poem about it because you understand it in retrospect and you're beyond that, but somebody else is still there, and perhaps they can't imagine themselves putting that out about themselves because they're still going through it. Maybe it's something like that.
I agree. And everybody deals with trauma a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've struggled with depression for a long time, and I still find myself sometimes when other depressed people say certain, I also struggle with empathy for the most part, but other depressed people will say certain things and I want to be like, just stop doing that. But it's like that I'm being as unhelpful as everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't have to think that. You don't have to do that. Just say nice things to yourself. But it's like other people aren't in that space.
Yeah, whatever's going to help other people, they all need a kind of individual strategy. I remember vividly, when I was, I taught English for a year in Spain, and I'd have to explain the same concept maybe 3 or 4 times until you see it click on everyone's face. You would explain it one way, and then 7 people would go, oh, and the other 3 you'd have to work on a little bit longer, and then they go, oh, because they all have different kind of learning styles before it's going to click. And I think mental illness is definitely one of those things as well. I still don't understand what it means to love yourself. I don't know what that means. I don't understand it at all. I don't know
I know
that it's...
a lot of people like that. I think I get it, but I also I could make a list and I could tell you everything I hate about myself and everything that I love about myself. Because the stuff I hate doesn't threaten the stuff I love, but I still get really, I don't know, I still get really down on myself. I think I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think it comes with like being able to sit with your flaws, or sit with the parts that you hate the most, you know?
I think maybe it's the expectation that it would feel somehow more intense or more healing than it does to love somebody else. Whereas, you know, if you love somebody else, you can still get irritated, annoyed with them, wish they were different sometimes. I don't understand. And so perhaps it should feel the same way to love yourself. Why would it be different?
So. And you have to live in your own head. So it's like you have to listen to those thoughts or feelings constantly.
Mm-hmm. It's the vivid awareness of like all the information you have, and then the way you're choosing to act regardless. And like, it doesn't help. I don't know. Perhaps it's just the lucidity of living with your own stream of consciousness makes you feel like, makes you feel like the stakes are higher, makes you feel like, you know, you shouldn't be like everyone else.
So. I think so. I was telling my daughter a couple of weeks ago that technically the only proof anyone has of anything is that they're having some kind of an experience, but like we don't technically know that anything's real. We just know we're experiencing something. Mm-hmm. And so I was telling her, like, the only thing that really matters, like, you shouldn't be a jerk to other people, but the only thing that really matters in the end is being able to like live with yourself. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
She, I think, she has a little bit of anxiety that she struggles with, especially as she's like getting a little older. And so we've been having a lot of these weird, deep talks about stuff like that lately.
Does that make you want to be kinder to yourself somehow?
Only it does, but a big part of it is that like I don't want my bad behaviors to seem normalized to her child mind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want her to see me treat myself bad and then think like that's just the way adults treat themselves, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the same with like my marriage. A big reason I wanted to get divorced was that I didn't want her to look at us and think that that's what a healthy relationship was.
Yeah, that's such a huge model in people's lives. I mean, people.
And I think children internalize that more than we realize.
I think enormously so. I think people are running on those automatic lessons without noticing throughout their entire lives.
I think so too.
Yeah. No matter what you do in life, it's always going to be like your most intimate knowledge of what a relationship looks like and what's acceptable, what's tolerable, what you should demand of it.
Yeah, and it's your first experience or interaction with that sort of relationship. So it like sets a foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It
it's
really
the same with like how your parents interact with you. I think set a foundation for how you expect to be treated by the same sex or the opposite sex, you know?
Mm-hmm. And how it's acceptable for you to act as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot about that stuff. I didn't really want to be a parent when I was younger. And so I think that I put a lot of thought into it because I'm a little more disconnected than like people who just expect to be parents or who really want to.
Mm-hmm. So how has it changed your behavior then? You're just generally more conscious of, if I do this, like I'm doing this as a parent, and am I happy with my daughter knowing I'm doing X, Y, Z?
Yeah, I do that, but there's also some things where it's like I do take a lot of time to myself to do my writing or to like go out with friends. Mm-hmm. Or spend time away from her. And I also think that behavior is good because I think that if she and maybe I'm just justifying it, but I think that if she decides she wants to be a parent one day, it's really important as like a woman to know that, like, or as any person, but like to know that you don't have to like sacrifice yourself and your well-being just because you have a child. Like, I think that's actually worse for the child to see.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it through. Yeah, it's complicated.
It's definitely complicated. I just like, I mean, I saw a lot of, I mean, I had one mother who wouldn't give up anything for her children. And then I had my grandmother who like felt like she sacrificed everything. And it's like, neither of them were happy people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that having a family or having children should make you miserable or make you feel like you're not yourself anymore. And so it's like, I feel like I have a good balance of being a little bit selfish on my own behalf and also like sacrificing certain things and changing certain behaviors for her.
Yeah.
But she's also really easy. Like, she's not a demanding child. And so it might be totally different for someone who has a very tightly wound kid, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I know I'm never going to have more.
Oh, really?
I would never get a kid this good again. The year she turns 18 is the year I'll turn 36.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still really young,
Yeah,
I feel.
Yeah.
And so it's like I mean, it's a whole second life almost. So I don't want to start over again now. I hated the newborn stuff. So no more for me.
So what comes next from you? Are you working on any other collections?
I am. I'm doing a second edition Sad Discoveries with some more extra poems in it for Analog Submission Press. And I've been working on a collection for Nihilism Revised that
nice.
And Burke lives like in Utah as well, which is funny to me.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm working on that. I'm trying to think of what else. That's mostly what I've been focused on. There's other stuff that comes up that I'm like, I could do this, but it's like I get too much on my plate. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm doing a little chapbook for Iron Lung Press as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you've got lots coming out. Mm-hmm.
So it's been good. I've had a lot of free time lately, and so I've been trying to fill it with like more creative stuff.
Mm-hmm. How about Horror Sleaze Trash? What's your involvement? What are the goals? What's coming next?
Well, I mostly work on the social media side.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that we always publish stuff on the website, but I know that we've been talking about doing more things with like chapbooks and like longer collections recently. Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of where a direction we might head in. And I want to, with like the modeling and the cover girls and stuff, I want to branch out with other kind of local photographers around here, mm-hmm. so that the pictures have like a different look or a different feel, you know, like get some more variety and work with some new girls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'm working on. Mm-hmm. I would love to do interviews for HST at some point, but I like the written form, you know. Mm-hmm. I love just having conversations with people, so.
Yeah, I'm really glad how this went, because what I did was I just wrote down the main kind of themes of your poetry, and I thought we'd just bounce off of that with a conversation to expand upon, the kind of topics that you deal with. So, I think
I like that.
Yeah, it worked nicely. So that was India LaPlace, author most recently of Sad Discoveries, out now with Analog Submission Press. Sounds like there's a lot more from her coming out in the future, so she's one to watch. I hope you enjoyed our interview. As always, if you're a reader, writer, listener, anyone with anything to say, you can always get in touch with me using losingtheplotpodcast@gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. But that's all from me for now, so until next time, bye bye.